It is hot in Topeka. So about 3 years and 3 months ago, I did my very first review on this channel. It really sucks. Really sucks.
That's it.
Hello?
Shinto, it's time.
It is 7:30.
What? No, I mean, it's time. Free has been gone long enough.
I see. It's like they say, you go Chinese, you never go back.
You went to Japan, and I'm not even sure that's a saying.
Maybe not a Scottish saying.
Anyways, Free gave us both one half of his password just in case, and I was wondering, could I get your half of the password so that I can upload the final verses?
Alright, Yusha.
Yes?
That's the password.
What is?
Yusha.
Yeah?
No, my half of the password is Yusha.
Oh, I see. That's kind of cute that you put me in his password.
What's your half?
Sucks 420. Gonna upload that video now.
You do that. Good luck!
Custom Robo. Talk about a game that people love. Released exclusively in Japan on December 8th, 1999 and developed by Noise, Custom Robo is arguably one of the best Nintendo 64 games that wasn't localized. Much like Sin and Punishment, Custom Robo is on many people's lists for Japanese N64 games that you should play, and I totally agree with that. It's a fighting game that doesn't really compare to any others, putting its own unique spin on it that has gone to charm its fans. Just like the title suggests, the player gets to customize their Robo to make them the best that they can be, and this is one of the reasons that the game stands out like it does. Custom Robo for the N64 can only truly be compared to one other N64 game. Custom Robo V2. What do you know? You make a really solid game but think you could do better? What do? You make a sequel. Developed by Noise and released not even a year after the first on November 10th, 2000, Custom Robo V2 is one of the purest sequels I've ever played. It takes everything that made the first game great, except for a pretty cool arcade mode, and added in little features here and there to try to make the best game possible. The question is though, did they succeed or did they overbake it? Custom Robo versus Custom Robo V2. If you're a fan of Japanese N64 games, then you definitely should have seen this one coming. I'm actually very excited to do this one, and I've had it planned since almost the beginning of Versus. Now, I don't know if I'm making this up or if the webpage is just gone because I can't find it anymore, but years ago when I was doing research on the N64, I came across a list of favorite N64 games by region. Custom Robo and its sequel were at the very top of that list for Japan, and ever since then, I've wanted to get my dirty hands on them. I've been so curious to play these games, and now that I compare video games because I enjoy making people mad, I see no reason not to compare these two. Remember that when I pick a winner, it won't necessarily be the game that I like more, but rather the one that I think is overall better. And just because a game doesn't pick up the win doesn't necessarily mean that I think that it's bad. With all of that out of the way, let's get to it. So, because the story of Custom Robo is all told in Japanese, and there's actually a story to be told in both of these games, I kind of want to put out a disclaimer. I am 90% positive that I know what the stories are in these games, but there's a chance that I could get some details wrong, and I want to apologize in advance for that. My Japanese isn't perfect, and what I know about the plot mostly comes from internet research. If you're wanting to skip story spoilers, then you can go to this timestamp right here. This is going to be a permanent thing for games with a bigger story, and these games have pretty big stories. Do you think that's enough stalling for you to go to the timestamp? Alright, final warning. Custom Robo starts with a dream sequence that is actually so intense that it ends up waking up our protagonist. He gets dressed, then walks downstairs where he'll meet his parents. His mom gives him a Custom Robo named Ray. His cousin, Shinichi, comes to greet them and take him out to learn how to use his Custom Robo at the Robo Station. What a nice guy. I sure do hope that when he teaches you, it doesn't become overbearing or excessive. When they get to the Robo Station, Shinichi realizes that he has forgotten his Robo, so he leaves, which allows you to meet some other characters like Hayao, who is apparently uninterested in Custom Robos, so he just takes out, and Yurie, who likes Custom Robos but can't partake in battles for reasons. Shinichi comes back, takes our hero upstairs, and teaches him how to battle. And then he takes him downstairs, teaches him how to get new parts for his Robo, and then it's off to the park where we'll meet Karen, who's known for being one of the best Custom Robo battler people around. Shinichi volunteers our hero up for a battle against Karen, and he wins because he's like the Yugi of this world, and then it's off to bed. This is kind of how the story plays out every day. Battle people and go to bed. I don't want to bore you with the details of every day, so I'm going to plow through the rest of the days and just tell you the importance of them. On day 2, our hero meets another rival named Reheat, who is a meanie butt, and beats him in battle. On day 3, he has a battle with Hayao, you know, the one who wasn't interested in Robos before. In this battle, Hayao is clearly an amateur because he uses the most basic parts. On day 4, our hero enters the Robo Cup. He's only had his Robo for a few days, but whatever. However, before he goes to the tournament though, he has to take something to his mom at her work at the medical center where he'll find Yurie, because she's a sick little girl, and her brother, Mamoru, who is a champion Robo Commander. With those introductions out of the way, he meets up with his mom and Dr. Homura, who are treating Yurie's illness with nanomachines. Our hero then goes to the tournament where he beats first Fukashi, an idiot, then Shinichi second, which is great because he's just one of the most annoying characters. I don't need your tutorial anymore! Leave me alone! Then he beats Hayao, who has gotten better, but he's still not great. Rahit is next, and the final battle is with Karen, who of course he beats. Our hero collects his trophy, and then it's good night. On day 5, our hero meets Katria, who makes custom robos, but he doesn't get to face her just yet. This day also introduces Jake, who beats Karen, but can't beat our hero. I just want to say that I hate Jake and his stupid flame gun. I hate you, Jake. On day 6, there is yet again another tournament where he takes on and beats in order Fukashi, Rahit, and Katria. This day was only part 1 of the tournament though. On day 7, the second part takes place where our hero beats a mysterious man named Gosetsu, who uses illegal weapons and is disqualified. This is a nice seed for the bad guys, by the way. He then beats Jake in his stupid flame gun. I hate you, Jake. And he battles and defeats Hayao in the final round. Hayao has actually upgraded to the dragon gun this time, which is a great weapon. You can really start to see how much he's improved. On day 8, he goes to take on Mamoru because he earned an exhibition match against him for winning the tournament, but the match is cancelled because Yurie is a sick little girl. Instead, he takes on Robo Kichi, who is able to change the Holocene as he sees fit. They battle and our hero wins because he's like the Tyson of this world. He then meets a person named Jiro, who is Mamoru's rival, and they battle. On day 9, he takes on the Great Robo Cup preliminaries, beating Fukashi, someone shady named Subaru, Karen, and the last battle is with Jiro. And honestly, I hate him. I hate him so much. I'll explain why later, but I hate him. I hate him so much. I also hate Jake, but I hate Jiro more. You have no idea how much I hate him. I hate him a lot. And our hero wins because he's like the Yamato of this world. On day 10, he goes to the school to find that there is a rampaging robo without a commander. He defeats the robo, and some of the more shady characters return to tell them that they are shady and that they are using the nanobots to control robos without a commander. The group goes to the medical center to find that Dr. Homura, that sexy beast, has been using his science for evil. Dr. Homura and our hero battle, and our hero wins. So now we know that there is an evil group out there, the Dread Army. It only took them 10 days to really show themselves, but you know, whatever. On day 11, the group gets together and they test their strength or something. Day 11 literally doesn't matter except that it shows us who this dude Akira is. On day 12, our hero and Akira go to Nojima building, and our hero takes on a bunch of people in illegal battles, including that nerd Rahit. After they finish this, he takes on Minamo, who uses illegal parts, much like her buddies, and our hero wins, because he's like the Hikaru of this world. On day 13, the group gets together to take on the Dread Army, which really means that the group gets together and our hero takes on the Dread Army. Near the end of this section, he takes on all the bad guys that he's met throughout the last few days in an arcade/Elite Four style ending to the Dread Army, which I think is great and is a wonderful nod to this game's arcade mode. Also, I hate the final battle with the Dread Army's leader, Shinonome, which I'll get into later, but I think you may be able to tell what I'm planning on saying. On day 14, our hero takes on the Great Robo Cup finals where he challenges Fukashi, Jake, I hate you Jake, Katria, Jiro, I hate you Jiro, and then Hayao. And this is something that I want to note. Hayao grows with you and he really feels like a rival. He goes from being this idiot with horrible robo parts, like our hero, to being in the finals of the Great Robo Cup with him. And that's how you tell the story of a rivalry. It's interesting to see a character like Hayao grow with you. After beating Hayao, our hero gets to finally take on Mamoru. And would you look at that? The stage that you fight on is the same one that was in his dream. Of course, our hero wins because he's like the Dan of this world. I've actually never seen Bakugan, but I'm just gonna go ahead and make assumptions. Custom Robo kind of has a problem with its pacing when it comes to storytelling. The story is told over 14 days, and it takes quite a while for the game to introduce any real antagonists. In the beginning, you're introduced to rivals like Hayao, Karen, and Trailer Trash, but none of them are bad guys. The actual bad guys are truly introduced on day 10, and there's a 3-day arc, kind of, where you take them on. The antagonists just kind of come out of nowhere. That said, I don't actually care. I think that the game should have tried to be longer so then they could pace out their antagonists a little bit better. They planted seeds near the middle, but it would have been better had they introduced the bad guys explicitly near the middle rather than just rushing them in at the end. Also, I hate you Jake and your stupid flame gun. Custom Robo V2 is actually considerably longer. Like, it's twice as long technically because it's in 2 sections. It's in 22 parts instead of 14. Oh god, why? Let's just get into it. This game starts off the same way as the first with a dream sequence depicting a robo battle that is so intense it knocks our hero out of bed. Afterwards, his younger sister Futaba comes to bring him downstairs where his mother gives him a custom robo that he won in a contest of sorts. This model is called Ray MK2. Futaba then takes him to the robo station to give it a try where our hero meets 2 new people, Ginta and Taihei, who is the new Shinichi. They do a few battles to learn the ropes and meet Professor Kusama, who asks to be referred to as RoboDoc. He asks if the characters are interested in helping him out with his research. They say yes, but he's not ready yet, so they'll have to come back tomorrow. It's a very uneventful day 1, but that's okay with me. Almost every other day though. I wish. Once again, I'll be summarizing them to try to keep this as short as possible. On day 2, the group goes to check out RoboDoc's research, but it ain't ready, so they have to go to Battle Square and do some battling to stall for time. With each battle, Taihei will give our hero advice. Die in a fire, Taihei. die in a fire. After stalling, the group goes back to the lab where Robodoc shows off a special holoscene that allows our hero to battle characters from faraway lands so long as they've registered their data. Our hero then battles with some of the characters from the first game, Shinichi, Karen, and Fukashi. On day 3, Taihei takes our hero to a secret base where he challenges and beats some generic kids. After this, our hero meets in the flesh Fukashi. Why did you pick him to come back? At least it's better than Jake or Jito. Fukashi challenges our hero, but Fukashi won't be doing the battle. A monkey named Caesar will be. They battle, our hero wins, and a character named Yaiba introduces himself and challenges our hero to a battle. But he's unable to use his custom robo for some reason and he runs away. Ginta says that Yaiba is one of 3 brothers. One of the 3 brothers was killed in an accident, and it prevents Yaiba from battling. The group then goes to the lab where our hero takes on Robokichi, Katria, and Jake. I still hate you, Jake. On day 4, Ginta wakes up our hero in the middle of the night to take him to Yaiba's house. The plan is to get Kengo's, that's Yaiba's dead brother, battle data so then they can give the data to Robodoc and he can make a hologram of Kengo. They are found out by Tsurugi, Yaiba's twin brother, who thinks that Ginta's plan isn't a bad idea. Tsurugi, by the way, goes to Takuma Academy, which is a school for robo battling. Yaiba finds this and the brothers get into a fight, and Tsurugi leaves. Our hero battles Kengo's data, and after he picks up the win, a message plays from Kengo that encourages his brothers to do good and whatnot. After this, everyone is back off to bed. When our hero wakes up, he goes to participate in the Sunday match, which is where people do battle at the robo station to basically audition for Takuma Academy. Our hero beats Ginta, Taihei, suck it Taihei, and 2 Takuma Academy cadets. The final battle is supposed to be with Nanase, but she decides that our hero is not worth the time, so she leaves. On day 5, oh no, we're only on day 5? The group goes to Takuma Academy, but they're not let in, so they try to sneak in, but the gate is closed. This is when they bump into a girl who battles Ginta, beating him easily. Our hero and the girl then battle, and he wins because, you know, after the battle, everyone has to take out because we've been spotted, man. But before the girl leaves, she introduces herself as Yurie. You know, from the first game. I kinda like that. The group gives up on Takuma Academy, so they decide to go to the lab where our hero battles a random robo, which is later revealed to be owned by Jiro. Why? Our hero then battles a hologram of Mamoru and then the real Robodoc. On day 6, the group tries to go to Takuma Academy, and this time they're let in because of Jiro. This is where they meet Takuma and Toraji. Nanase is here too. She's not nice. Our hero takes on a bunch of cadets and wins, earning himself, Ginta, and Taihei all a spot in Takuma Academy. On day 7, the 3 characters are put to individual tests. Basically, our hero just plows through a few cadets, and through some short cutscenes, we're told that they actually did 100 battles. On day 8, our hero is woken up by Ginta, who wants to find clues about Yaiba and Kengo. They run into Yurie, who tells them that she's investigating Takuma Academy. Jito shows up and calls her a child and whatnot. You suck, Jito. Yurie believes that there is an evil organization running out of Takuma Academy, and with that, everyone goes back to bed. Look at that, halfway through, and we got some evilness of brewing. When they wake up, it's back to training. This time, our hero beats some more cadets, Tsurugi and Toraji. After all that is done, Ginta is happy that our hero beat Tsurugi, but Tsurugi claims that it was just a fluke and challenges our hero to a rematch. They go to do that when Takuma shows up and gives them his blessing, but then Yaiba shows up and battles Tsurugi. This time, he's able to actually battle. His robo goes out of control and injures Tsurugi, so then our hero steps up and beats some sense into Yaiba. The group then all goes to rest. On day 9 is when the graduation exam takes place. Yeah, this game's story pacing is a little jank too. Because of our hero's performance the previous day, Takuma is pushing his final test forward. Our hero gets to go on victory way and battle Toraji, Jito, you suck Jito, Yurie, Nanase, and finally Takuma. Once he wins, he graduates, and then he gets to go back home. On day 10, our hero runs into Yurie, who wants his help in investigating a robo shop that's giving out free tune-ups. They go to the secret base and do some battles, but they don't really learn anything, so then they go to the lab and our hero battles a robo from the first game called Oracle Head. That's all. Waste of a day. On day 11, the group goes to the Marine Park Festival where our hero battles and defeats the team of Ginta and Taihei, because they can team up apparently, Yurie and Yaiba. Our hero gets his trophy, but then Fukashi shows up with another animal that he's trained, this one being a dolphin. Our hero battles the dolphin named Cleopatra and wins. This game's story is kinda weird. On day 12, our hero is waken up early again by Ginta, who says that Taihei is acting weird. Ginta and Taihei battle, Taihei picking up the win, so then our hero beats him. After this, Taihei returns to normal and the group hears some people complaining that they ruined their plans. With that, they go to bed. When our hero wakes up, he discovers on the news that there are reports of a bunch of people acting weird. Apparently, people that got the free tune-up are being hypnotized, and all the hypnotized people have ties to Takuma Academy. Yaiba hears this conversation and demands that everyone goes to Takuma Academy to see if there's any truth to this. When there, they interrogate Takuma, who claims to be innocent, but he does confess that he thinks that the known to be dead brother, Kengo, may be alive, and he thinks that Kengo is behind the hypnotizing chip. Day 13 is the last day of the main journey, and essentially, it's the group taking on the big baddies. When the group wakes up, they see a bunch of cadets going towards Victory Way. They follow and meet the man and woman from before, Ruga and Baranji, who reveal that they're part of the Goliath organization. They're a group split off from the Dread Army from the first game, and they've been hypnotizing people to make their forces bigger, like Nanase and Toraji. Tsurugi then willingly joins their side because he thinks it'll make him stronger. Our hero is then put into a series of battles against some random robo, Toraji, who comes to his senses, and Tsurugi, who decides to stay with the Goliath organization after his loss. The group goes to infiltrate Goliath's base, but are split up in the process. Our hero takes on a lot of battles, which eventually leads into a jail cell where Yurie and Taihei are being held. Our hero takes on Kotengu and releases Yurie, Taihei, and what do you know? Kengo. He's got nice hair. It turns out that Kingo did help them build the machines, but he was doing it because he wanted to help his brothers get stronger. The group splits up once again, and our hero has many battles. And he eventually runs into Homura from the first game, that sexy beast. Our hero and Homura battle twice, then the group is forced to battle more robos and our hero goes ahead. He takes on and defeats a dude named Kotengu, Boronji, a hypnotized Jiro, of course, and Yaiba and Tsurugi as a team. Twice. After this is when our hero meets the main baddie, Rokudo. He's old and ugly. He's got Nanase all tied up and will kill her if Takuma and our hero don't battle on a special Holocene that inflicts actual pain on the user. Takuma reluctantly agrees, and our hero defeats him without any remorse. Roga shows up and is defeated, and then our hero does battle with Rokudo, who has a giant robo. Our hero defeats him, and Rokudo decides to blow up the base, but Nanase begs him not to and reveals that Rokudo is her father. Rokudo ain't having none of that and tries to take on our hero again, but he's too weak to do so. Nanase doesn't like seeing her father in pain, so then she offers to battle our hero with an experiment robo, Meijeru. Our hero wins, Nanase falls over from pain and says that Goliath is done for. The police arrive and the group parties. The end of the main story. Oh god. Oh god, there's so much. Now, just taking this main story, I'd argue that this does its storytelling better than Custom Robo 1, even if only slightly. It makes it pretty clear early on that there is some shady stuff going on with Takuma Academy and its people, and I think that's overall better. However, this story also suffers from weird pacing. The fact that you're only at the school for 3 days is ridiculous, and also they waited until the very last day to come out and truly introduce the main bad guys. The last day. They did plant their seeds much better though, because the characters from Takuma Academy are a lot more antagonistic than that of the friendly rivalries from the first game. Like mentioned before, this was only the main story, and honestly, it's only the first half. I'm not going into the second half because, oh boy, is it lengthy, and its main focus is tournaments. It's kind of a callback to the first game's story focus on tournaments and its use of an arcade mode. That's pretty cool. Overall though, both of the stories are fine even if their pacing is totally bonkers. They very much fall into that fantasy sports category that we know very well from anime, and I personally really like that. The controls for Custom Robo are by no means bad, but I did find that they were difficult to get used to at first. In the overworld, you move around with the control stick and confirm things with A. Cool. Easy. Nice. While in battle, you move with the control stick, use your gun with A, use your bomb with B, use your pod with Z, do a melee attack with any of the C buttons, I think, and jump and do air dashes with R. The button mapping is probably the best that it can be, but I also kind of think that it's all over the place. I wonder how the game would play out if they would have had most of the moves designated to different C buttons. I also really wanted the game to either have a block or counter button, because I hate nothing more than feeling like I'm cornered and that I just have to take attacks, which is something that happens a lot. Custom Robo is kind of a clunky game with a lot of cooldown, which makes sense to a degree, but I feel like there is so much cooldown that movement can kind of be jaded. Do some shooting, cool down for a second or two. Do some flying, cool down for a second or two. It's a bit excessive, and I think that the game would be better if the movement was a little bit more fluid. I'm not saying that the game should remove cooldown, but maybe cut down the cooldown time. Like, it makes sense that there would be cooldown after using very strong weapons, but not after almost every weapon is used. One thing that I could really appreciate about the game is that it has momentum and characters really have weight. You're not allowed to just zip zoop around all willy-nilly, but instead it takes you a while to really move fast. I like that because it gives a sense of realism to the game. And in terms of momentum, if you fire a weapon while running, you will continuously move in that direction, even if you take your finger off the joystick. It's kind of a small detail, but it's something to keep in mind during battles. Custom Robo V2 controls essentially the same except for one small detail, and one thing that I think to be true, but may not be true. First off, you can do team battles in this game, and because of this, you need a way to tag in a partner of sorts. Up-C does this. That's the definite change. The change that I think may be true, but may be entirely wrong, is that I felt like cooldown was not nearly as bad. Doing combos in this game seemed to come a lot more easier to me, and I think that may have been because the cooldown wasn't nearly as long. The movement in general in V2 is superior though. It's a lot more fluid. When I went back to Custom Robo after playing V2 for a while, I couldn't help but feel like it was slightly uncomfortable. The music in Custom Robo is good. The soundtrack was composed by Shinji Hosoe, Ayako Saso, and Yasuhisa Watanabe, and it's very childlike, and I think I'd even use the words magical and goofy to describe it. I don't think that this is one of the best soundtracks in comparison to other N64 soundtracks, but it definitely stands out. I wouldn't argue that there are any bad tracks, but when I really think about it, there aren't any tracks that I thought were great. There wasn't really anything that I would want to go out of my way to listen to. The quality of the tracks is good, but not great. The music in particular seems to be a little lower when it comes to actual sound quality, but it's passable. Most of the music is pretty upbeat, and I kind of liken it to Diddy Kong Racing. It's just lacking some of that in-your-face energy that Diddy Kong Racing has. If I had to recommend any track for you guys, I'd recommend the track Shippu Robo Kichi. Something about it really seems to convey Custom Robo to me. It's the standout track in my book. One thing that is very fitting with this soundtrack is that almost all the music seems to be some sort of variation variation of techno. I'm not a techno person myself, so I don't know the specific genre, but still. The game is all about robots, so having the music be techno or a variation of really works. I also argue that because this game has that whole child hero thing going on, the childlike music actually works. In terms of belongingness, I think that they did a great job of putting tracks that worked for certain stages. Stages, of course, have different kinds of themes and gimmicks to them, and because of this, there needed to be different music written for the right tone. With that said though, not each stage gets its own track. Some tracks were shared between stages, and I'm perfectly fine with this. There are a plethora of stages, and I think that it's okay to have levels share music. I also think that if you have music that repeats a few times, then there's a chance that the tune in particular might stick out for some reason. If you have something play once, then it's probably going to be forgotten unless it's awesome. One thing that I remember thinking when I first listened to this soundtrack was that the music was all over the place, and I still argue that this is true. Even though it all has something that keeps it cohesive, this soundtrack has enough variety to where I think there's something here for everyone. With that said though, there's reason for someone to argue that the soundtrack would be missing some cohesiveness, and I completely understand that. Overall, Custom Robo's soundtrack is solid but not particularly special. There are good things there, but nothing that I would go out of my way to listen to. One thing that I think about the sound in general that's great is all the robo noises. The clanging and the weapon noises are awesome. Then there's this. Custom Robo V2 soundtrack is, well, almost everything I just said can be applied to Custom Robo V2, except that now it has 4 composers: Shinji Hosoe, Ayaka Saso, Yasuhisa Watanabe, and Yosuke Yasui. Custom Robo V2 actually ends up reusing a lot of the tunes from the first, and I understand that that can bother people, but I personally don't mind because if you look at these games in their own individual bubbles, then where the music comes from doesn't matter. Where the music is placed and how the music is used in the game is what truly matters. If you want my review on Custom Robo V2 soundtrack, then you can go back to Custom Robo's soundtrack review, and there you go. Just don't get caught in like an infinite loop or something. So the graphics with what they were aiming for are good. Outside of battles, the presentation is similar to that of Harvest Moon 64, but I think it looks a little bit more pixely. It doesn't exactly look as polished as it should. The characters look very flat, which is fine overall. It's stylistic, but I think it could have looked better. When you talk to important characters, a photo of the character will appear, and these look pretty good in their own right, but I wish that they were more animated to show emotion. I feel like each character got maybe 3 different pictures, and that's not enough to show various emotions. Some of the pictures' differences were simply in whether or not their mouth was open. That's lazy. When in the battles, they used the N64's blocky look excellently. Since the robos are machines, having them just be a mesh of polygons really works. In V2, the guns and equipment and such are pretty detailed. It was really awesome to see how the various weapons look. It showed a certain amount of polish to the game. The stages themselves all look great too because they're so simple in their approach. A good amount of them are standard stages. Some of them though are a lot more detailed, and even when that was the case, they're still simple enough to where they look good. These games, with maybe the exception of how lazy some things can come off, like the characters, look great for N64 games. It uses the N64's limitations to its advantage, and I commend it for that. Custom Robo has some of the most interesting gameplay I've come across in terms of the N64. One thing that I find interesting is that every place that I look puts Custom Robo in a different genre. One of the first times it was explained to me, I was told that it was a 3D fighting game, and after playing it, I agree. Then I found a source claiming that it was an RPG, and after playing with it, I agree. And another genre that I see it thrown into occasionally is simply action, and after playing it, I agree. These games have a lot of different elements from various genres, and I'm not comfortable pigeonholing it into one set genre. Battles in Custom Robo are pretty unique, and you'll notice this as soon as you start up a battle. When a battle starts, this cannon appears. Its purpose is to shoot you and your opponent's RoboCube onto the battlefield. You get to control where it shoots, so you can try to shoot away from your opponent or try to land close depending on how your playstyle is. Your cube, like all cubes, has 6 sides, and however your cube lands will determine how you start the battle. The cube's 6 sides represents the 6 sides of your Robo's body. If it lands with the head facing up, then your Robo will be standing to start the battle off, which is ideal. If it lands with the feet facing up, then your Robo will be upside down and it'll take a while to get up. I'm unsure of why this is a feature, but it's something that I kinda like. Battles start off with a gamble of sorts, and it adds a certain unpredictability to each bout. Already, the game has distinguished itself from other fighting games within the first 5 seconds of a fight. The goal of Custom Robo is pretty simple. You want to deplete your enemy's health before they can take down yours. Simple. The way that you go about doing this is with 4 different kinds of attacks. You have your gun, bomb, pod, and a melee attack that you can implement. The gun is going to essentially be your main weapon. It's often used to get in quick, decisive strikes. The bomb is the opposite. It's used to get in big strikes, but it's a lot harder to hit. The pod is interesting. I kind of used it to control the field. Some pods are very slow and will make their way around the field and eventually blow up. Some pods are a lot like bombs because they blow up fast. The distinct thing about pods is wherever you're pushing on the control stick will be where they're shot, unlike the gun or bomb which automatically go for your enemy. The melee attack isn't exactly the best. It's a quick lunge essentially, and while you're attacking, you're invincible. But it really leaves you open to attacks, and since the lunge isn't very far, then there's a good chance you're going to miss. At least that was my experience opponents in the story mode in the first game. Depending on which Robo you're playing as will change how good the melee attack is. While there aren't traditional combos that you can put into place like a regular fighting game, you can combine how you attack with your weapons to get in some nice combos. One combo that I often put into place was shooting my opponent with my gun and then tossing a bomb at them. From my understanding, this is the main combo that people use. However, I would find that depending on what gun or bomb or pod I was using would change up my combo that I would want to do. And this is where the custom part of Custom Robo comes into play. As you've probably already been able to figure out, you can switch out what guns, bombs, pods, and even what legs you use. That's right, legs. The legs determine stuff like how fast you move, how long you can float in the air, and how high you can jump. You know, leg stuff. You start off with all the pretty standard equipment, but as the game goes on, you'll earn better equipment, which is where I argue RPG elements come into play. Essentially, after you've beaten a foe with a gun, bomb, pod, or set of legs that you don't have, you'll get that gear. It's wonderful. I loved taking on challenging opponents and observing what weapons they had because I knew that once I beat them, I'd get their weapon, and that's awesome. Sometimes, because it better serves the plot, you don't get the weapon, but when you do, it's awesome. Understanding what weapons work best against specific opponents really helps to keep this game from going completely stale. For example, when I would go up against slow opponents, I would use the dragon gun. It was good to use from a distance, and since they were slow, they wouldn't be able to dodge it very well. For fast-moving opponents, I would use the three-way gun, Gatling gun, or splash gun, and when all else failed, I throw on the rayfall gun, which I could fire off rapidly into the air, and then it'd track them down. One thing that I'm not a big fan of is that a lot of this comes from trial and error. I'd face an opponent, lose, then switch my weapons up, and probably lose again. I had to continuously test items against opponents, so I usually had to take a loss first. I also found that I was able to plow through the game by generally just switching up my gun. I didn't do a lot of switching my bomb, pod, or set of legs, which is probably why I took a lot of losses. In the first game in particular, I didn't notice a lot of differences in bombs, so I didn't like switching very often, and I fell in love with a certain pod called the wave pod. It would send out this green wall of sorts, and it was a great way to control the field. Legs? I would put on random depending on their color. I'm not good at video games. Now, a lot of what I just said here can also apply to Custom Robo V2, but they did change up a few things for the better. One of the first things that you'll notice in the story mode is that you're not restricted to just using the Custom Robo given to you at the beginning. In V2, you'll get to use all kinds of different Robos during the story. I chose not to because I really like Ray, but the option is there and recommended. I also noticed that V2 makes it a lot more clear on what bombs do and their differences. For instance, there's a bomb that if it hits your opponent, then they will be knocked towards you. This was great for combos. Then there was a bomb that would freeze your opponent in their place, leaving them open. And there's also this giant bomb. This is just a few examples, but when playing V2, I clearly knew the differences of the bombs, and that really helped me to make informed decisions on battles. Custom Robo V2's weapons also do a good job at balancing out the game. For instance, in the first game, I felt like I was restricted to maybe 3 guns if I wanted to truly win, whereas in V2, there were about 10 guns that I would switch out regularly. One thing that I think is worth mentioning about the combat in general is that combos were a lot smoother in this game. It wasn't just shoot and then bomb. It could have been shoot, then bomb, then shoot again, or some other variation of that. The combat was a lot more fluid in general. Also, getting up at the beginning after the dice roll was so much easier, whereas in the first game, it took an excessive amount of time. What are you doing? Just stand up! So, that's combat. But we're not done yet. Now we gotta talk about stages. One complaint that I've always had about fighting games in general is that I feel like the stages are inconsequential. A lot of times, they're there as a backdrop and no other reason. Some fighting games make the stage come into play here and there, but when you're in a 2D space, the stage doesn't seem to matter very much, and that's fine. Plop some characters into a 3D space, and the stage begins to matter just a little bit more, especially in a game like Custom Robo. There are obstacles that can get in your way or even protect you. The space that you're put into really matters in these games, and almost half of the strategy is where you're at in the level. There are also a lot of levels in both games, and they're very diverse. There are standard levels with no real gimmick to them. There's just a lot of obstacles to hide behind usually. Then there are levels that fit in the categories that you expect in a video game like ice, fire, underwater, and toy train. You know, the normal ones. These levels require a lot of extra awareness because you have to take a lot into account. You'll slip around on the ice, get burnt by fire, and be very tempted to say choo-choo when you see the train. Also, here's a turtle. Overall, the gameplay throughout all of Custom Robo and Custom Robo V2 is incredibly inventive and very well executed. V2 definitely did a better job at balancing weapons and robos, which I like, but that's not to say that gameplay from the first game is bad by any means. Bosses! I originally wasn't going to do a bosses section for this versus, but I think that I can kind of determine the main bosses in the game to justify putting in this category. Custom Robo only has a few clear-cut bosses, but I want to give a few shoutouts to some notable characters. Heiyao is your rival, and because of how he grows with your character, I would consider him a boss to a degree. He's a boss that grows, and I kind of like that. Also, the fact that you end up getting some really snazzy gear from him, like the dragon gun, is kind of why I consider him a boss of sorts. Jiro isn't necessarily a boss, but I want to go ahead and throw him in here too. This guy has the rayfall gun, which is beyond broken in this game. I had to challenge him so many times because of this one stupid weapon. It was ridiculous, and that's why I hate him so much. That's it for kind of bosses. The first clear-cut boss is Shinonome. He's the leader of the Dread Army, so he's the final boss because of story. I hate this boss fight. You have to fight him twice, and the first fight is reasonably challenging. I struggled a bit, but I never felt like it was unfair. If I lost, I'd take note of why and try a different strategy when I challenged him again. The second fight is absolute garbage, and that's because you can't see anything. You have this fight in space, and the obstacles are almost invisible, so it takes away a lot of of the strategy. This was kind of an artificial way to make this hard. Instead of actually trying to make it reasonably challenging, they remove vision from the fight, and that's in no way fair. I hate this boss fight. Why did you do this? The second and last boss fight is against Mamoru. Once again, he's reasonably challenging, and I'd even argue that he fights differently from a lot of the other characters. Mamoru just charges on in there and was constantly rushing me. He controlled the fight, and I felt like in a lot of the other fights, I controlled them. This fight is kind of interesting in that sense. Custom Robo V2 does its bosses a lot better. There aren't really a lot of characters to note that aren't bosses, so I'm just gonna go ahead and jump into the clear-cut ones. At the end, there are 2 fights against the team of Yaiba and Tsurugi. There's a certain kind of narrative feel to this boss fight because you see these 2 brothers that are constantly bickering come together. They come together for nefarious reasons, but still, it's actually a pretty challenging fight too because these 2 are supposed to be 2 of the best in the game. Also, check out that design. That's a boss design. The next boss is Rokudo, and I love this fight. His robo is giant, and I think an effective way to make one of your bosses intimidating is to have them be giant in size. His robo towers over yours, but it kind of just meanders around the stage. It takes a lot to beat in terms of laying into him, but it's not too hard. It does have that perfect clear-cut boss feel though, and I appreciate that. The final boss is Nanase. This is another boss that works because of the narrative. Supposedly, she's using an experimental robo, and she's actually pretty difficult. This is one of the most challenging fights in the game, which makes sense because it's the last one of the main arc. I will say though that I didn't find it too challenging because by this point, I think I was pretty good at the game. I beat her pretty easily, but she still put up a solid fight. The bosses in Custom Robo V2 are much better. They don't use cheap tactics like the first game does, and there are a lot more clear-cut fights. So time for my conclusion. Both games are very solid, and I actually don't have a lot of complaints about either game. It's kind of refreshing to be honest. Am I sick? Custom Robo and Custom Robo V2 are 2 of the better N64 games that I've played, and if you ever have the chance, then I highly recommend playing them. Let's say though that you can only play one game. Which one should it be? Which game is better? The answer is pretty obvious. With all of this said, my winner is Custom Robo V2. Custom Robo V2 does everything that I think a sequel should do. It added a lot of things while still retaining what makes the first so good. It's a very well balanced game, especially in comparison to the first. There's really no doubt in my mind on this one, but no matter, I recommend both. My winner, Custom Robo V2.
Pack up all my cares and woe. Here I go, singing low. Bye, bye, blackbird. Where somebody waits for me, sugar sweet, so is he. Bye, bye.